Well, when it comes to the theme parks between Disney World and Universal Studios, in my opinion, there's a bit of a paradigm shift going on as Disney obviously has the history side of things. They have the major market share, and they've built upon their success for decades and decades to become the behemoth that they are. But in the last 10 years, Universal has been slowly building up their own portfolio of things that they offer, the way that they do things, and I think Epic Universe is going to be the culmination of that time period, and they will continue to build on from there. But there's also this idea that everything that Disney does is at a certain level, and I think that's for sure how it used to be. But I think in recent history, I don't think they've quite hit that mark. And it seems like Universal, while also in the same boat where they haven't hit the mark on everything, I think there is some things you can look at in the recent history with the Wizarding Worlds, what they've done with the Nintendo lands in other countries that is soon to come to Epic Universe, and see that they're definitely doing things on a different level. And in my opinion, I do think Disney is trying to play catch up with the creativity that Universal currently has been doing. But we have a video here today by Great American Coasters that points out that Universal is actually better at building theme parks than Disney World. So I figured this would be a pretty good video to react to and get some thoughts on.
Love Universe?
Isn't she something? Well, you two have a good night.
I give you Krabby Land!
Well, it's finally confirmed. Epic Universe will open to the public next year in 2025 on May 22nd. That's right, Memorial Day weekend. Universal is gunning for one of the most crowded times during the year. Honestly, I didn't expect that. I thought Epic Universe would be opening sometime in August. But no, they are going for that Memorial weekend opening. And I am beyond excited. Of course, I'm not going to be there for the first 2 months of its opening. I'm not insane. The crowds are going to be intense.
Well, I think I'm insane because we're going to go the opening day and the next day. So I highly imagine that this visual he has right here probably will be accurate on some level for that.
In fact, the entire first year is going to be intense. I can't imagine there's going to be a single day where the park's not going to be packed. But when I eventually get to Epic Universe, I can't wait to experience everything the park has to offer. All 5 lands, all 11 rides, every single detail Universal has constructed inch by inch. It is definitely going to be worth the hype, and I do think this could be the best theme park in America. Now keep in mind, I don't say that lightly. There are a lot of parks out there, and a lot of them are spectacular. Originally, I would have said the best theme park would be Islands of Adventure or the original Disneyland. And trust me, I know it sounds a little premature to call Epic Universe the very best before it's even complete. But God, just look at this work of art. It just really makes you think, man, Universal is way better at building new parks than Disney.
I heard some people, criticize some others that saying like Epic Universe is going to be like that level, perhaps the best theme park, in America or whatever the case may be. And I don't think it's necessarily preemptive to or like jumping the gun to say that. Can you look at what they're doing here? But this is also from a company with Universal that has been doing theme parks for a long time, and they have a proven track record that they know how to do these things. I think if you were looking at an upstart company that had never done this before, it would be a different situation. But given their track record, what they're able to do, and, unless they just completely forgot how to run a theme park, I don't think that this is going to be an issue on their end as they understand, park operations and things of that nature. And I do agree, looking at it on its face here of what Epic Universe is offering, I don't know if I would put it as the best in North America yet. I'd have to maybe take a closer look at things, but I do think that it is going to be easily a top 3 theme park when you look at North America. And then you're talking about the worldwide appeal here. I definitely think it's right away up there and a huge asset for Universal.
Universal is opening a park that, frankly, looks like it would take Disney 30 years to complete. Epic Universe...
Valid point. I would love to know if Disney actually set out to build a new theme park, what that timetable would look like. Because we've seen them take 3 to 5 years for single attractions, even, lands, let alone an entire theme park.
To complete. Epic Universe has so many attractions and experiences that it doesn't really compare to a typical theme park opening. When I reflect on other theme parks that open in America, from both Universal and Disney, there is a clear distinction in quality. Universal, whenever they open a new park, they make sure it's complete. A full 1 to 2 day experience with a multitude of rides and no dead spaces that seem unfinished. It's something that Universal doesn't really get a lot of credit for. When I compare a new Universal park to a new Disney park, it's night and day. Universal parks just have more rides, more attractions, and more offerings for its guests. Compared to Disney, where their new theme parks, they were always incomplete, lackluster, and tiny. Each new Disney park was very minimal and didn't offer enough stuff to do. I know, I sound harsh. Why would I talk about Disney in this kind of light? After all, Disney, they are the titan of their industry. When you hear the phrase theme park, this company usually comes to mind. But when you look at Disney's track record of opening a new gate for one of their properties, it's not particularly stellar. For example, if we turn back the clock to when Disney started debuting their quote-unquote newer parks, and I say quote-unquote because these properties were built over 20 to 30 years ago, you could tell that these parks, they weren't really up to the traditional Disney standard. Hollywood Studios, it was a small park, it didn't have a lot of rides.
Not to mention, if you look into the history of what went into MGM Studios, I mean, essentially, Michael Eisner found out, or through the grapevine, there's a lot of speculation on how he was able to know that Universal Studios was opening up a theme park. He basically rushed to put together MGM Studios as a competitor or just trying to one-up them, and was able to get that park open before Universal Studios was. And really, it was, and I think what he's talking about here is it was clearly thrown together. There wasn't a lot of things to do, lots of dead space, as they just wanted to get this thing open before Universal did as a way to one-up them. So, and that's perhaps a whole other topic for a whole other video about that whole thing, because it's really interesting. But I think when you look at Magic Kingdom and Epcot versus Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom, there is a distinct difference in terms of when they were opened and the things that they had to do, and like how much, I guess you could say, was a complete park.
Animal Kingdom, it was a lot more grand. However, same issue, didn't have a lot of stuff to do. California Adventure, big dumpster fire. That did not go well. The point I'm trying to make is that Disney, they kind of dropped the ball on all these properties. Each and every one of these parks, they weren't a full day experience, and certain sections of each park kind of felt cheap. Obviously, today in the present, that's not the same case for the most part. These Disney parks have evolved so much from when they first opened, but when they did debut back in the day, you can definitely tell that Disney didn't give each park all their undivided attention. If for some reason you don't believe me, let me just show you what I'm talking about. When we look at a park like...
They had that right. Yeah, I mean, if you look at, Dino Land's getting redone, obviously turning that into like the Tropical Americas. If you've never been here, essentially it's getting ready to go away, but what it has been is basically the same rides that you would see at a state fair. I mean, to be honest, like Primeval Whirl, which is what we're watching right here, I'm pretty sure I rode that at a traveling fair when I was a kid. I mean, there's nothing about it that screams Disney necessarily. It's just an off-the-shelf ride that they put a little bit of dinosaur theming on.
Like Disney's Hollywood Studios, or at the time when it opened back in 1989, Disney's MGM Studios, you can tell that their ride collection was inadequate. Before the days of Tower of Terror or Rock and Roller Coaster, they only had 2 rides when they opened. That was the Great Movie Ride, which I really miss. It was a slow-moving ride that took you through the Chinese theater to show you all the American movie classics. And then there was the Studio Backlot Tour. This was a combination of a tram and walking tour to give you a close-up view of a production and film set, basically giving you the behind the scenes of movies, which was essentially the entire theme of the park. They wanted to show you the production side of films.
Which is the copying side of what Universal Studios was doing the same thing. So they both were having a park that took you like behind the scenes, like become part of the movies, which is not really the part of either of those parks now. So they've definitely, both of them, Universal Studios and Hollywood Studios, have evolved a lot since they were opened.
But besides those two rides and, of course, the Indiana Jones Stuntacular, the park didn't have anything else when they first opened.
Oh yeah, don't forget that Ninja Turtles used to be at Hollywood Studios. I kind of wish, I mean, they can't do it now because Nickelodeon is owned by Paramount, and I don't know who has the theme park rights to it, but yeah, they used to be at Disney at one point in time.
You can only do Great Movie Ride, Backlot, and Indiana Jones. That's it. Of course, later that year in December, they opened Star Tours, but I don't like that thing, so who cares? But for the time...
I'll disagree with him there. I think Star Tours is a solid ride. In fact, I would say even with Galaxy's Edge, it is the second best Star Wars-based ride in the entire park. I think Rise of the Resistance, that is the best. It's one of the best rides out there. To their credit, it's a very good ride. I'm not a big fan of Smuggler's Run. I think the idea of it is a good idea, but in execution, usually you're left with little kids piloting the ship, which I understand completely as a parent to smaller kids. But at the same time, it does affect the experience for everybody else. But Star Tours has a lot of variety. It's never, it's not typically a hard ride to get on. And I do think it's entertaining.
Being Hollywood Studios, they didn't really have anything. It took about 5 years for them to get their next major addition, that being their Sunset Boulevard expansion and the installation of the Tower of Terror. And then it took another 5 for the Rock and Roller Coaster to be built. All in all, I would say it took over 30 years for Hollywood Studios to feel like a full-day park. Because up until 2017, when the Great Movie Ride closed, all they had was Tower Terror, Rock and Roller Coaster, and Star Tours. Oh, and Toy Story Mania. Forgot that thing even existed. All in all, Hollywood Studios, it didn't really feel complete.
I think Toy Story Mania is a solid ride. I enjoy that one a lot.
Until 2019, when Toy Story Land and Star Wars Land were finally finished. So it took 3 decades for the park to get a grand total of 8 rides, not including any shows. Meanwhile, Epic Universe, it's opening with 11 rides right off the bat. And if you think Hollywood Studios...
Not to mention at least 2 shows. I think at least 2 shows. Maybe another one, but yeah.
Studios is an isolated incident, well, then you haven't been paying attention, because Animal Kingdom doesn't fare much better. When the park opened in 1998, it was the exact same situation as Hollywood Studios. It only had 2 rides, those being Dinosaur and Kilimanjaro Safari. But they did also have 2 shows, one being the Festival of the Lion King, and the other being It's Tough to Be a Bug. I can somewhat excuse Animal Kingdom's lack of attractions slightly, just because the main marketing draw was the animals. The park had multiple trails and walking paths so you can observe the animals. Essentially, Animal Kingdom was one big zoo. And something about Animal Kingdom that I like way more than Hollywood Studios is the fact that it's way more detailed, and there's shade. I don't know if you noticed, Hollywood Studios, there's no shade in that park. Animal Kingdom, you're surrounded by nature and trees, and decrepit buildings that look like they were there for ages. But was ambience alone enough to salvage this park when it first opened? It's a little tough to say, because I like walking around Animal Kingdom. I could probably lap the park a few times without getting tired. But eventually, I want to go on a ride. And when my only 2 options are the Safari and Dinosaur, I'm probably going to get a little bored. Which is why Animal Kingdom, it had a title of being a half-day park up until, God, Avatar. It took until 2017 for it to feel like a full-day park. And heck, I still think Disney...
I still feel like on many levels, Animal Kingdom is still a half-day park. Also, it may have shade, but actually Animal Kingdom will feel hotter than any other park you're in because it's kind of built in a bowl, and it feels like the humidity just sits on you in there. So that, to me, is the most uncomfortable park when it's hot out, just because of the way it just, like if it's 90 degrees, it feels like it's 95 degrees in that park. It's a hotter feeling park.
And heck, I still think Disney doesn't think it's a full-day park. Most of the time today, Animal Kingdom closes at 6 p.m. So not even Disney believes that it's worth keeping the park open later in the day. I don't think you can use the excuse that they close earlier because of the animals, because that's not true. The park used to be open till 9 o'clock when Avatar opened. And if not that, if we look at a similar park to Animal Kingdom, Busch Gardens Tampa, they're usually open till 11 o'clock, even though they're also an animal-driven park. So I think their short operating hours is strictly because of labor costs. They don't want to keep the park open late if they don't believe it's worth the added expense. Animal Kingdom,
Which is why they're adding things to Animal Kingdom, because basically it is a half-day park. I mean, I know a lot of people enjoy it. It's my least favorite Disney park, and it's not even really close to me. I'm not a big fan of zoos, so I'm not against the animals being there and checking them out, but for me, I don't get really any enjoyment watching animals in their, just hanging out. So that's something I really enjoy, especially in a theme park setting. I do think the theming is good, but again, a lot of the rides are very underwhelming, and not to mention you have Expedition Everest, which is a great coaster, but you do have the Yeti that's been broken since that opened. So yet again, to the point here of when things are built and revealed, their track record is not as maybe stellar as people remember it as being. Obviously, people talk about the newer things that have had issues when you talk about Tiana's Bayou Adventure and some of those things. But yeah, they've had a track record of this to some extent. And I will say, to their credit, opening a theme park, in 1998 versus 2024, 2025 is very different expectations, as the theme park, realm in general has grown immensely since that time period. So people expect a lot more, but still his point does remain. I think he has a pretty good point.
Animal Kingdom, unfortunately, by definition, is still a half-day park, even after 25 years since the park's conception. And I wish this was the only issue Animal Kingdom still had, but we still have to look at the elephant in the room, Dinoland USA. I don't know why Disney built this with Animal Kingdom. It's just a pop-up carnival in a parking lot. It doesn't fit in with Disney. It doesn't fit in with Animal Kingdom. It's the definition of a cheap, budget-cut land that didn't need to exist. But I'm happy.
It definitely seems like there were budget cuts at some point, because again, if you've never been here, it very much does feel like just a carnival land. Loosely tied to dinosaurs, so it kind of fits in with Animal Kingdom and like the dinosaur area there. But yeah, I'd say even for our kids, Triceratops Spin, something that they like to do, but you can find those rides in other parks at Disney property as well. And then you have carnival games, basically. It's just, there's not much to it. And again, it doesn't fit anything else that Disney has done. It just seems like a very odd thing that just sticks out.
But I'm happy that now, after 26 years, they're finally getting rid of this land. Goodbye and good riddance. So, as you can see, Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom, they both had rocky, minimal openings, and it took them decades to get them to where they are today. And that also goes for our last park of discussion, California Adventure. I'm going to be quick with this place because it is such low-hanging fruit. When you think of a failed Disney park, this place comes to mind. The whole conception of a California theme park in California was doomed to fail. If you know anything about the history of this theme park, it was originally supposed to be a Western version of Epcot, Westcott, until Disney, they fell out of love with that project and decided to cut the budget by 66%. They scrapped the entire Westcott proposal and came up with this idea, California Adventure. The park itself, it wasn't really anything to look at, but how was the attractions? Did they have a large collection of rides? Well, actually, yes, they had 12. Unfortunately, they were all pretty bad. Paradise Pier itself had rides that were nothing like a traditional Disney attraction. Instead of dark rides, they opted for flat rides. They got a swing, they got a Wild Mouse, a drop tower. It was meant to mimic a boardwalk amusement park. That is not Disney. It's actually the complete opposite of Disney. Why did they think carnival rides would be a good idea? Was Dinoland that successful they thought they should do it again? The only ride at California Adventure that actually felt like a Disney-approved attraction was Soarin'. Everything else, cheap, poor, bland. And let us not forget that this is the park that gave us Superstar Limo, a ride that is highly regarded to be the worst thing Disney has ever created.
I can't speak too much on this because I've never been to Disneyland, but I have heard people pan Superstar Limo for years. And really, when you look at this time period with Disney, with Animal Kingdom and with California Adventure, this was under Michael Eisner. And while I do think Michael Eisner did some great things, toward the end of his tenure, he wasn't making as good of decisions. I think some of that was Frank Wells, who was the co-CEO, had died. And I think when it was just him in charge, it wasn't as good of a track record. And it definitely seemed like there were budget cuts and things were, taking the shortcuts. They were doing like straight to DVD movies for sequels and things like that during that time period. So it was a time period where I don't think they put their best foot forward on a lot of these things. And to Disney's credit, one thing Iger did do was they did kind of fix up California Adventure to at least bring it up to closer to the standard of, say, like Disneyland.
I still don't know why they themed an entire ride to D-list celebrities. Oh well, that ride failed miserably anyway, and it will be forgotten forever. As you can see, California Adventure, it had a rocky start. And fortunately, the park has gotten better over the years, primarily from additions like Cars Land and Guardians, which are still the only reasons why I go to California Adventure. The park today, it feels like a hodgepodge of IPs and failed ideas, and it just doesn't work. I really wish they can tear down the place and try again. But at this point today, Disney's best course of action would be to completely rebrand the park. Disney and their quest for expansion has yielded a lot of mistakes. They haven't opened a new park in America for over 20 years, and when they did, it wasn't that remarkable. Once again, if we compare Disney to the competition, Universal, they have definitely mastered the art of building a new theme park. Now, of course, Universal, they didn't start out this way. The Universal Orlando Park back in 1990 was kind of a train wreck. The park, they only had 4 rides: Jaws, Confrontation, Disaster, and E.T. And most of the time, they were closed or didn't even open. Jaws, in fact, had so many technical difficulties that it shut down and didn't open until 1993. Things didn't settle until around a year later when Back to the Future opened. But after the underwhelming debut of Universal Studios Orlando, Universal, they took notes, and for their next park, Islands of Adventure, they came back swinging. This park felt complete. There were plenty of rides to do, there were multiple theme park lands, and nothing felt rushed or underfunded. No, Islands of Adventure essentially came out exactly the way Universal wanted. The park didn't even add a new addition until 2010 because they didn't really need anything new. But when they did unveil something new, the park only got better. They installed the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, they built Hagrid's, they got Kong, they built Velocicoaster. Islands was everything a new park should have been. And now, 26 years later, Universal has only raised the bar. Epic Universe...
Well, and you're talking to me too about when Universal first opened Universal Studios. I mean, to my knowledge, they had never opened a theme park or ran a theme park before. So, they definitely figured some things out when, obviously with Islands of Adventure, had more things to do there. And as time has gone on, it definitely, you can tell that Universal has, they've made mistakes, as has Disney, but Universal seems to kind of learn from their mistakes a bit more. The Wizarding Worlds have been a massive success, and you look at, Hagrid's and Forbidden Journey and all these ones, like they've done a very good job with these. So they're taking the things that worked well with those lands, in my opinion, and putting those into Epic Universe in terms of the level of detail and theming. And that was really the jump forward for Universal, was the Wizarding World. When they first opened up those, it was kind of the first time they showed everybody we are able to do these types of lands. And in my opinion, Disney has still not yet answered for those, because I think that the Wizarding World lands alone are better theming than what Disney has done. And Disney has done some good theming. I'm not saying they have not, but I think that those 2 lands alone are on a whole different level. And I think they're going to, definitely apply that over to Epic Universe. So, opening theme parks is, opening them and then maintaining them and adding to them. Obviously, those are some different things there, as you can obviously make arguments that Islands of Adventure has lots of areas that are out of date now. But to his point here, when it did open, it was a complete park, which is something that, to his point here, Disney hasn't really done, and it could be why they're gun shy a little bit about opening a new theme park right now, as a lot of people have expected them to make that announcement, which I think they eventually will, but they could be a little gun shy on it, just because opening a new theme park does open you up to major criticism if you're not able to pull that off. And that's something that Disney doesn't necessarily want to deal with on many levels, I don't think. And that's probably why they're just sort of adding to their existing parks at the moment and maybe trying to feel some things out.
Will be bigger than Islands of Adventure. It'll be bigger than Universal Studios. It'll be bigger than any park Disney has ever built. Universal has set a new precedent for theme parks. Disney can no longer half-ass a new park if they choose to build one again, because Universal has shown them that there is no excuse in being cheap with your ambitions.
I mean, he brings up some good points there. I mean, I definitely think with Epic Universe, whatever plans Disney has had about a new park, and I'm sure they've had, ideas and preliminary things that they've thought about for a new park, but I'm guessing whatever plans or ideas that they had, they may be looking at and thinking they need to rework it or something, because I don't imagine that they expected Universal to open up a new park on the level that is going to be Epic Universe. And I know the park's not open yet, but again, we can look at what they're doing, look at the theming, the construction speed, and the fact that they have done this before. This is not anything that they're new to in terms of like immersive theming. And honestly, how great the Wizarding Worlds have been. I think that Epic Universe, seeing what we've seen from the construction photos, that they are just going to take this to a completely different level. And if you're Disney, yeah, they're still number one, but I definitely think that Universal is going to continue to eat into that market share. But it's sort of, Disney's going to open up these new lands that they announced on whatever timetable that's going to be. I've said that probably looking at 5+ years before any of this stuff really opens, if you look at Disney's timeline for construction. But even if in the next few years, which they very well could, announce a new theme park, when would they start it? How long would it take? What would they even do it with? Like, there's a lot of questions that when it comes to Disney about, like, what would you even theme a brand new park to? A lot of people have talked about a Villains theme park itself, back in the day. I never thought that was a good idea. I do think a Villains land does make a lot more sense, because I just don't know about an entire park for villains, which I don't think they're going to do now, because I obviously have Villains Land. But there's a lot of questions when it comes to Disney, and they've had issues with just opening up rides. I mean, Tiana's Bayou Adventure is a great example of this, as that ride, and even the one in Disneyland hasn't been off to the best start either. So, you look at the Epcot overhaul and the things that they've done there compared to the concept art. I think there's a lot of questions around Disney, whether it's from the Imagineering, whether that's more on the corporate side. I'm not really sure where it lies, if Imagineering doesn't have the ideas they used to, or if it's the corporate end of things really hampering them and just budget cuts and not wanting to do certain things or not taking risk. I don't know where it lies, but either way, on the creative side, I don't really even think it's an argument here that you can look at what Universal's doing, and clearly they are doing much more creative things, taking risk. You look at the Battle at the Ministry ride itself. I mean, everything we're hearing about that ride is the most ambitious ride perhaps that has maybe ever been built, with multiple ride manufacturers and just this massive building for it. And obviously Super Nintendo World is probably, at least to me, and I think many people, the most highly anticipated land. And we know that that will probably, more than likely, unless something drastic happens, be a success, because look at Hollywood and look at Japan's versions. Those have done great for Universal in those parks. So I have no reason to doubt it will also do great for Epic Universe. And then that's before you even get into How to Train Your Dragon, which it's Vikings and dragons. Kind of hard not to love Vikings and dragons, so that's a popular theme. And then Dark Universe has really come around as a dark horse candidate for like perhaps one of the best lands, and a land that I wasn't expecting a lot out of. And again, you look at Disney, I don't, in just being quite honest, I don't really know what they would do. I suppose they could copy, Tokyo Disney and do some of the Disney Sea things. I think those could be successful. But again, you can make an argument those would make more sense in fantasy lands. And if they announced it, I don't think they're going to build that park nearly as quickly as Universal has built Epic Universe. And really, if you're looking at this in terms of, going back and forth with each other, Universal is going to continue to not only build out Epic Universe, but build out existing areas of Islands of Adventure and the studio side themselves by adding new attractions there. So by the time that Disney has the lands that they announced done this year completed, it's very likely Universal could have, let's just say 2, 3, 4 more attractions done in that time period. I mean, it's possible. I'm not saying that is going to happen, but it's possible. And then they continue to go. Like, what does Disney then counter that with? The thing that would make the most sense at that point, given how Disney doesn't really like to develop new land in existing parks, how they just said Monsters, Inc. is going to go into where the Muppets is they like to retheme old areas and do things like that. More than likely, I think you would be left with a scenario where they may be forced to announce a new theme park, just because I think that's what a lot of people are expecting them to do. And I know a lot of people think that that would just be something great for Disney, but it does raise a lot of questions in terms of how would they do it. Are they really even capable at this point to build a new park on the level of, say, like Magic Kingdom and Epcot when those opened? And, I guess to be fair to Disney in this comparison he's talking about in this video, it was a different time period. You're talking about in the 80s and 90s opening up a new theme park versus today. I mean, theme parks have only grown in popularity. People expect a lot more out of a new theme park. So Universal opening Epic Universe with 11 rides, 2 shows, all these other things to do. Like it's a massive jump in terms of the expectations and kind of setting the bar for a new theme park. And so, if Disney does go about building a new park, they're going to have to step up their game in terms of what they've done in the past. And I've said this before. I think, Disney has been doing a lot of riding off the coattails of things like Michael Eisner did in terms of all the resorts he built, all those things that he did. And while, not everything he did was a home run, but he did do a lot of things, especially at Disney World, to build that up into the vacation destination that it has become. But I think when you're looking at going forward, I do think there's a lot more questions. And I guess you could say, if you don't agree with me completely, I guess you could say there are a lot more questions now about how Disney can open up new rides, lands, and a theme park potentially today versus, say, 10, 20 years ago. But at the basis of this video, I agree with him. I think when you actually looked at what they opened with, what they offered, Disney's last 3 theme parks that they have opened have not been, shining examples of how to open a brand new theme park. And I definitely think Universal is going to open in a completely opposite fashion here with all the things that they're going to have to offer. And not only the theme park itself, the hotels around it, the food options that are going to be there. Like, this park is going to be a full-fledged, at least single-day park. We don't even know how long it's going to take to do everything in Epic Universe. It could be a 2-day park to get everything done here. So while, Disney was opening up, and to their credit, the first Universal Studios wasn't the best in the world, but obviously Islands of Adventure improved. But, Disney's first offerings, and until kind of recently, they were half-day parks. I think Universal is coming out the gate with potentially a 1 to 2 day park experience on day one. But either way, that's going to be it, though, for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, do you agree with this video here that Disney is not the best when it comes to opening brand new theme parks? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.